Hello everyone, welcome to my channel.
My name is Sophia Bennett, and I used to think my family's lies were harmless little white excuses we told to keep the peace. I was wrong. The lie that shattered everything began with one simple phone call. I was sitting at the kitchen table when my dad told my grandpa, "Hawaii's canceled, Dad. We're having financial problems right now." Grandpa believed him, of course. He always did. He even offered to help, but Dad refused, pretending to be the noble son who didn't want charity. A week later, Grandpa opened Facebook and froze. There they were, my parents, smiling on a Hawaiian beach, with my mom's parents. The same trip Grandpa had paid deposits for months ago. 1 month later, Dad showed up asking Grandpa for $100,000. Grandpa just smiled, handed him an envelope, and said, "Take this instead." What was inside made my father collapse. It began on a quiet Thursday morning, the kind that felt too normal to hide something so cruel beneath it. Dad was pacing in the kitchen, phone pressed against his ear, his voice unusually soft. "Yeah, Dad. I know how much you were looking forward to Hawaii," he said, sighing deeply. "But we just can't do it this year. Things are rough financially. Maybe next time." He sounded tired, convincing, almost too convincing. Across the room, Mom gave him a small nod, mouthing words I caught only half of. "Say it's for money." When he hung up, he looked strangely satisfied. "That should settle it," he muttered. I blinked. "Settle what?" He poured himself coffee, avoiding my eyes. "Your grandpa means well, but sometimes he doesn't know when to stop helping. This way, we save him the trouble." Save him the trouble? I thought Grandpa wanted to go. He'd been planning this trip for months, booked the resort, the snorkeling tour, even bought matching shirts for all of us. I still remembered him calling last week, sounding so excited. "Sophia, wait until you see the sunrise from Haleakala. It'll change your life." Now, my dad was canceling it like it meant nothing. "Dad," I said carefully, "Grandpa already paid for the flights. Why not just tell him you changed your mind?" He gave me a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Because that would hurt his feelings more." Mom set her mug down. "Sophia, sometimes adults have to make decisions kids don't understand." "I'm 22, I said flatly. "I understand lying." Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. "Watch your tone." That night, I heard them talking in their room. Their voices were muffled but sharp. "He's too controlling, Glenn," Mom whispered. "My parents offered to cover everything. It's simpler this way." "Exactly," Dad replied. "He'll never find out. No drama, no guilt." I stood in the hallway, heart pounding. No guilt? Grandpa had always been there for us, birthdays, bills, college tuition, and now they were cutting him out of a trip he'd planned for us. The next morning, Dad told me, "Remember, if Grandpa asks, the trip's off. Don't make it complicated." I wanted to scream that it already was complicated, that it was wrong, but the words caught in my throat. For the next few days, Grandpa kept calling. Dad ignored every ring. "He'll move on," he said. But Grandpa didn't move on. And neither did I. Because deep down, I knew lies like this don't just fade. They grow. They rot everything they touch. And soon, this one would explode in ways none of us could ever undo. 3 days after that phone call, Grandpa called me. His voice was calm, but I could hear the weight in it, the kind of quiet that only comes from disappointment. "Sophia, sweetheart," he said softly. "Is everything all right with your parents?" "Yes," I hesitated. "Why do you ask?" He exhaled. "Your dad told me they canceled the Hawaii trip, said there were financial problems. But the travel agency called this morning, they said the reservation was still active. The flights weren't canceled either." My chest tightened. "Maybe they forgot to update it?" He chuckled without humor. "Forgot? Your father doesn't forget when money's involved." There was a pause. "Do you think he's hiding something?" I wanted to protect him. "Maybe there's just a mix-up, Grandpa." "Maybe," he said, but the way his voice cracked told me he didn't believe it. That night, he posted a photo of his backyard, his rose garden. The caption said, "Some things bloom only when tended with truth." I stared at it for a long time before liking the post. It felt like he wasn't talking about flowers anymore. A few days later, everything changed. I was at his house for dinner when he suddenly went quiet mid-sentence. His fork froze halfway to his mouth. Grandpa? I asked. He turned his tablet around slowly. Explain this, Sophia. On the screen was a Facebook photo of my parents smiling in front of a blue Hawaiian ocean, sunset glowing behind them. The caption read, "Best family vacation ever. So grateful for this time together with the Morgans." My stomach dropped. The Morgans, my mom's parents, stood next to them in the picture, all of them laughing, sunburned, carefree. The date on the post? Yesterday. I don't understand, I whispered. But I did. I just didn't want to say it out loud. Grandpa zoomed in on the image, his hand trembling. He told me they were struggling, said he couldn't afford it. I offered to help, and he said no, said he wanted to handle things himself. He swallowed hard. I believed him, Sophia. I always believe him. I could feel the heat rising in my face. Grandpa, I didn't know. I swear. He gave a small, sad smile. I know you didn't, sweetheart. But your father did, and he'll have to live with that. Then he stood, walked to his desk, and opened an old leather notebook. On the first page, he wrote 3 words in block letters. What I know. And beneath it, a second heading, what I need to know. That night, for the first time in my life, I saw my grandfather not as the kind old man who loved his family unconditionally, but as someone who had just been betrayed, and who was quietly, methodically preparing for war. When I visited Grandpa that Sunday, the house felt different, quiet, but sharp, like every corner was listening. He greeted me with a calm smile that didn't reach his eyes. On the coffee table sat his tablet, the screen glowing faintly. Sit down, Sophia, he said. His tone wasn't angry, it was careful, almost clinical. I want you to look at something. He tapped the screen. Another Facebook post appeared, my parents, again in Hawaii. This time they were at a luau, flower leaves around their necks, drinks in their hands. Mom's parents laughing beside them. The caption read, "Grateful for family time in paradise." No mention of Grandpa. Not one word. I swallowed hard. Maybe they just forgot to tag you? He let out a dry chuckle. Forgot to tag me, but remembered to tag everyone else? He scrolled down to the comments. So jealous, one read. Another said, "You deserve this break." And then I saw a comment from my grandmother, Mom's mother. "So happy to finally have this trip with our side of the family." Grandpa's finger hovered over that line. "Our side," he repeated, voice trembling. As if I don't exist. I couldn't find words. He leaned back in his chair. "I booked that resort. I paid the deposit. I even ordered those stupid Hawaiian shirts. And he told me they canceled." His voice broke at the last word. He closed his eyes for a moment, trying to keep his composure. "Grandpa, please," I said, reaching for his hand. Maybe it was Mom's idea. You know how she can be." He looked at me sharply. "Your father made the call, Sophia, and I let him. That's on me." He stood, walked to his desk, and opened the notebook again. The pages were already filling with neat handwriting. Lists, dates, small details. "What are you doing?" I asked quietly. "Writing down the truth before anyone tries to rewrite it," he said. "Because people like your father, they count on silence. On time dulling memory. Not this time." He picked up a folder labeled Travel Documents, Maui, and slid the printed itinerary inside. "Evidence," he murmured. I watched him, calm, deliberate, frighteningly composed. The kind of calm that only comes when anger has turned into purpose. Before I left, he said softly, "Sophia, do me a favor. Don't mention this to your parents yet. Let them think I don't know." I nodded, though my throat was tight. As I walked out, I heard the faint sound of pen against paper. What I know. They lied. What I need to know. Why? I didn't realize it then, but Grandpa wasn't just hurt, he was preparing a plan. And my father had already made his first, fatal mistake, underestimating him. For the next month, Grandpa didn't call my parents once. He didn't post any more photos, didn't comment on anything. He just vanished into quiet observation. But I could tell from his voice when we talked, he was waiting for something. Meanwhile, Dad seemed completely unbothered. Every time I mentioned Grandpa, he brushed it off. "He's fine, Sophia. Probably busy gardening or something. Mom nodded, pretending to agree, but I saw the unease in her eyes. She knew. One Sunday afternoon, Grandpa finally made his move, though my father had no idea it was a trap. Dad came home early from work, smiling too wide, carrying a box of pastries. "I'm heading to Dad's place this afternoon," he told Mom. "It's been a while. Time to smooth things over." I froze mid-step. "What are you going to say?" He shrugged. "Just visiting. Maybe he'll finally forget that stupid trip." That stupid trip, the same one Grandpa had spent months planning. When he arrived, Grandpa welcomed him as if nothing had happened. He even brewed Dad's favorite coffee. They chatted about the weather, about the market, about the new fence the neighbor was building. For 30 minutes, Grandpa let him talk. He didn't mention Hawaii once. Then, casually, Dad sighed. "You know, Dad, business hasn't been great lately. The economy's been rough. I might need to make some changes." Grandpa tilted his head. "Oh? What kind of changes?" "Financial ones," Dad said, his tone careful. "I hate to ask, but maybe a little help until things pick up again. Just a short-term loan. Say, 100,000? There it was. The real reason for his visit. Grandpa's eyes softened, but his voice stayed steady. 100,000 is a lot of money, son. I know. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. You've always said family helps family." Grandpa smiled faintly. "You're right. Family does help." He stood up. "Wait here a moment." Dad's expression relaxed. He thought it was working. He looked around, probably picturing the check he was about to get. A few minutes later, Grandpa returned. In his hand was a sealed envelope. "Take this instead," he said simply. Dad blinked. "What's this?" "Something to remind you that every lie has a price." He handed it over, expression unreadable. "Thanks, Dad," my father said, laughing nervously. "You didn't have to make it dramatic." Grandpa just smiled. "Oh, I think you'll find it dramatic enough." He watched as Dad tucked the envelope into his briefcase, completely unaware that inside wasn't a check, but the beginning of his reckoning. And from that day on, the silence in our family wasn't peaceful anymore. It was the sound of a storm quietly gathering. Dad didn't open the envelope right away. He was too confident, too sure that Grandpa would never really deny him. On the drive home, he whistled to the radio, tossing the sealed packet onto the passenger seat, like it was already spent money. When he finally sat down at the kitchen table that night, Mom asked, "So, did he help?" He grinned, waving the envelope. "Of course he did. He's dramatic, but he's not heartless." I stayed quiet, watching him tear it open. His smile faltered almost instantly. Inside wasn't a check, just several crisp pages of legal documents, notarized and stamped. The heading read, "Bennett Family Estate. Irrevocable Trust Agreement." Dad blinked, confused. "What the hell is this?" Mom frowned, leaning closer. "It looks legal?" He started reading, his lips moving silently until he froze. He transferred the house? The accounts? To a veterans charity?" Mom gasped. "What?" I felt the air leave the room. Dad's hands shook as he flipped through the papers. "All of it. He's put everything in a trust. He doesn't own a cent anymore." And then, in Grandpa's careful handwriting at the bottom, was a line highlighted in yellow. "Beneficiary, Arizona Veterans Alliance, Phoenix Chapter." Dad slammed the papers down. "This can't be real. He wouldn't just give it all away." Mom whispered. "Maybe he's sick? Confused?" He read the next section, his voice trembling. Conditional clause. One descendant may receive $50,000 upon the grantor's death provided there are no disputes, challenges, or legal claims against the trust. He looked at me, wild-eyed. "He's cutting us off." I didn't answer. I couldn't. That night, Dad stormed into Grandpa's house again. I followed, half out of fear, half out of disbelief. He didn't even knock. "What the hell is this?" Dad shouted, slamming the papers onto the table. Grandpa looked up from his book, calm as ever. "Exactly what it says. You transferred everything to a charity? Why? You think I don't deserve my inheritance?" Grandpa closed the book slowly. "No, I think you don't deserve my trust." Dad's face went pale. "All this because of one stupid trip?" "One stupid lie," Grandpa corrected. You looked me in the eye and told me you couldn't afford Hawaii while you sipped cocktails on a beach I paid deposits for. That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. Mom stepped forward, trying to soften her tone. Dad, please. He didn't mean to hurt you. It was just deception, Grandpa interrupted. And it's not the first. I've helped you for years, thinking you needed support. Turns out you only needed someone to lie to. Dad's fists clenched. You can't just give away our family assets. I already did, Grandpa said quietly. And before you try anything foolish, understand this. It's irrevocable. That means permanent. He leaned forward, eyes steady. If you ever truly loved me, you'll respect that. Dad's voice broke. You've lost your mind, Grandpa smiled faintly. Maybe. But you lost something far greater, your integrity. The silence that followed was unbearable. I could hear the clock ticking behind us, each second stretching the distance between them wider. Dad swayed slightly, color draining from his face. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came. His knees buckled. Dad! I screamed, rushing to catch him as he collapsed. Grandpa didn't move. He just whispered, almost to himself. Sometimes, the truth hits harder than any fall. And as I held my father on the cold tile floor, for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure who to pity more, the liar who fainted, or the man he lied to. Dad woke up in a hospital bed hours later. The doctor said it was stress, his blood pressure had spiked, his body simply shut down. But when I saw him lying there, pale and furious, I knew it wasn't just stress. It was pride collapsing under the weight of its own lies. When he came home, the silence between my parents was unbearable. Mom moved carefully around him, like he might shatter. I overheard her whispering, "You need to fix this, Glenn. Before it gets worse." "Fix it?" he hissed. He stole my inheritance. A week later, the Morgan's mom's parents arrived. They didn't even knock. Glenn Morgan, my maternal grandfather, marched into our living room holding the trust papers. His wife, Nora, followed close behind, her face pinched with outrage. "This is unacceptable," Glenn snapped. "How could he cut his own son off and hand everything to strangers?" Dad muttered, "He's lost it." But Grandpa hadn't lost anything. In fact, he was more lucid than ever. The next morning, the Morgans confronted him at his house. I was there when it happened. "How could you humiliate our daughter's husband like this?" Nora demanded. Grandpa stood by the window, unbothered. "You mean the same husband who lied to me? Who told me he couldn't afford a trip while sitting in a luxury resort I booked?" Glenn stepped forward, red-faced. "You're being unreasonable, old man. We'll take this to court." Grandpa turned, his gaze sharp as glass. "You'll try, but you'll lose. You think your little charity trick can't be undone? We'll have it reversed for mental incompetence." Grandpa actually smiled. "Then you'd better bring proof. Because I've already scheduled medical evaluations, neurological, psychological, and physical. I'm perfectly sound, Glenn. Can you say the same about your conscience?" Nora gasped. "You can't talk to us like that." "I just did," Grandpa replied calmly. "Now, leave my house." They stormed out, slamming the door so hard the picture frames rattled. That night, Dad paced in the kitchen, talking on speakerphone with a lawyer. I sat on the stairs, listening. "Yes, I understand. Yes, he's 81. No, I don't think he's mentally stable. He's giving away everything he owns. It has to be undue influence. Maybe that lawyer, Chen, he's manipulating him." "Dad," I said quietly. "He's not being manipulated. He's protecting himself." He spun toward me, eyes burning. "You don't know what you're talking about, Sophia. You're a child." "I'm 22, I said. "And I saw what you did. You lied." His voice cracked. "You think I don't regret it? One stupid lie, and he ruins my life." "It wasn't one," I said softly. "It was years of taking and pretending it was love." He didn't answer. He just slammed his fist against the wall. A few days later, Grandpa called me to his house. His lawyer, Richard Chen, was sitting at the kitchen table. A neat stack of files lay between them. "I want you to understand something, Sophia," Grandpa said. "Your father thinks this is about money. It's not. It's about truth. I'm documenting everything. Dates, conversations, every threat they've made." He looked up at me with calm determination. If they come after me legally, they'll find I've already built my defense. Defense? I whispered. He nodded. When liars go to war, truth becomes your only armor. And that's when I realized my grandfather wasn't just preparing to fight back. He'd already won, he was just waiting for them to realize it. 3 weeks later, Grandpa sent out invitations, handwritten notes, folded neatly, delivered by mail. One for Dad, one for Mom, one for the Morgans. Each said the same thing. Friday, 3 p.m., my house. Bring your honesty. When Dad read it, he scoffed. He's playing games now. But he went. They all did. And I went too because something told me this wouldn't just be another argument. Grandpa's living room felt like a courtroom. The curtains were drawn, the air heavy. Richard Chen, his lawyer, sat quietly in the corner, a folder in his lap. Grandpa stood by the mantel, composed and silent. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "We're here to discuss one thing, truth." Dad rolled his eyes. "Dad, enough of this. You've proven your point. Let's just talk about fixing this trust nonsense." Grandpa held up a hand. "There will be no fixing. Only confession." Mom's voice trembled. "Confession?" He turned to Dad. "You want $50,000? You think you're entitled to anything from me?" Dad swallowed. "I just want what's fair." "Then tell the truth," Grandpa said. "Right here, in front of everyone. Admit what you did." The room went silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Dad frowned, defensive. "This is ridiculous." "No," Grandpa said evenly. "Ridiculous was lying to me about Hawaii, taking money you didn't need, pretending poverty while drinking cocktails on the sand. Ridiculous was thinking I wouldn't find out." Glenn Morgan slammed his hand on the armrest. "This has gone far enough, old man. You can't humiliate your own son like this." Grandpa turned slowly. "Humiliation is earned, Glenn. And if you think you can intimidate me, you've mistaken my silence for weakness." Nora gasped. "You're destroying this family." Grandpa faced her calmly. "No, Nora. Lies destroyed this family. I'm just revealing the ruins." Dad's voice broke. "You don't understand. It wasn't supposed to be like that. Mom's parents wanted to." "Stop blaming others." Grandpa's voice thundered for the first time. "You're 54 years old. Take responsibility." The shock of it silenced everyone. I'd never heard him raise his voice before. Then, quietly, he continued. "Tell the truth, Glenn. Say it." My father's jaw clenched. His hands trembled. "Fine." His voice cracked, and for the first time, it didn't sound angry, it sounded small. "I lied. We went to Hawaii. With the Morgans. I didn't want you there. They said it'd be awkward, that you'd ruin the mood. So I told you it was canceled." Mom whispered, "Glenn." But he kept going, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I was ashamed, Dad. I didn't want to admit it. And now I've lost everything." Grandpa nodded once, expression unreadable. "That's the first honest thing you've said in years." End of 4. He walked to his desk and pulled out a document, the clause from the trust. "This says you will receive $50,000 after my death, provided you accept the trust as it stands and never challenge it. Do you understand?" Dad nodded slowly. "Then that's the end of it," Grandpa said. "Truth for money, lies for nothing." Richard Chen signed as witness. The Morgans said nothing, their faces drained of color. As we left the house, the late afternoon sun hit my father's face. He looked older than I'd ever seen him, hollowed out by guilt and pride. And behind him, standing in the doorway, Grandpa looked like the last man standing in a war he hadn't wanted to fight but fought anyway, for something far greater than money. Months passed after that confrontation, and the silence that followed was deafening. Our family no longer gathered for birthdays or Sunday dinners. The air around us felt fractured, brittle like glass that had already cracked but hadn't shattered yet. Dad barely spoke anymore. He sold his business, claiming he needed a break. Mom avoided Grandpa completely. And me? I became the invisible bridge between two worlds that no longer wanted to meet, but Grandpa seemed lighter. Not happy, just peaceful. Every week, he tended to his roses, wrote in his notebook, and sent quiet donations to the veterans' charity he'd chosen. One afternoon, he called me over. "Sophia," he said, handing me an envelope. "I want to show you something." Inside was a letter on heavy paper, stamped with an emblem, Arizona Veterans Alliance. He read aloud. Mr. Bennett, your recent donation provided housing for 3 homeless veterans and their families. Your generosity has changed lives. His eyes glistened with quiet pride. That's where my money went, he said softly. Not to people who pretend to need help, but to those who actually do. I smiled, though my chest ached. You really gave up everything, he chuckled. No, Sophia. I just stopped feeding greed. A few weeks later, I found him at his desk again. This time, browsing travel sites. Planning another escape? I teased. He looked up with a grin that reminded me of the man he used to be. Hawaii, he said simply. The trip I never took. I froze. You're going? Alone? He nodded. This time, yes. Alone. But not lonely. He booked the same resort, the same snorkeling tour at Molokini Crater, every detail of the trip he once planned for my parents. But this time, it was for him. When he left for the airport, I hugged him tighter than ever. Promise me you'll send pictures, I whispered. He smiled. Only if you promise to live honestly, even when it costs you. 2 weeks later, a postcard arrived in the mail. The photo showed the beach at sunset, gold waves, the horizon burning with color. His handwriting filled the back. Freedom isn't who you travel with, Sophia. It's having peace in your heart when you arrive. Love, Grandpa. I stared at it for a long time, tears blurring the ink. Dad saw the postcard later that night. He didn't say a word, but I noticed his hands trembling as he read the message. For the first time, I saw regret, raw and unguarded, flicker across his face. Grandpa returned from Hawaii looking younger somehow, like he'd shed the heaviness of years. The Veterans Charity sent another thank you letter the next month, another family housed, another life changed. When I asked how it felt to finally take the trip, he smiled. Peaceful, beautiful, honest. That word honest lingered in the room like a prayer. And in that moment, I realized Grandpa hadn't just gone to Hawaii. He'd gone to reclaim something my father had lost the courage to live with: truth, even when it hurts. Because in the end, some journeys aren't about escaping lies. They're about finding the kind of freedom that no one can take away.